I'm Renee Taylor. I work with National Black Trans Coalition, and my pronouns are they, them, and their, and I use she on occasion.
My name is Joanna Cifredo. My pronouns are she, her, ella, y aquella. I am based in Puerto Rico and I work with True Self Foundation. It's a organization here that supports the trans community.
So,
Anna, if I may interrupt real quick to introduce myself, because I'm Victoria Rodriguez Roldan, to say it properly. I just wanted, I'm the Senior Policy Manager at AIDS United, and I just wanted to point out that we do have Spanish interpreters ready to help, but if they do, they need to know if people need the services, and if people say it out loud or write it in the chat, they'll join. Queremos saber si hay gente que le hace falta servicios de intérprete. Primero necesitamos saber si necesita los servicios de traducción. Escríbelo en el chat, o si necesitas intérprete, o dilo en voz alta, interrumpe todo. Eso es perfecto, y en unos minutos van a venir intérpretes para la sala. Nada, eso es todo. That's it. You can keep going. Sorry about that.
okay, that's okay. Thanks for that, Victoria.
When it translated it in the captions. Keep going.
Okay, so what we're doing is we're going to use why is storytelling important? Do anybody else want to give us why you feel like why storytelling is important?
It leaves a lasting impression, and it connects the person that you're trying to solicit, so to speak. It connects them to the cause and what you're trying to accomplish.
Yes. Thank you for that.
It gives people a face. It gives people, when we're talking about a specific issue, especially when we're advocating, for example, if we're lobbying on the Hill or with your state or local legislatures, telling our story gives a face to an issue. It also gives you the opportunity to own your own narrative. If you don't claim your story, people can, and people do, people will characterize you in a certain way. So telling your story, owning your story gives you that opportunity to own your own narrative.
Yes, and I think it's more important than ever that people are able to tell their own story and no one else tells their story for them. Thank you, Brian.
I'll say this. Hi, this is Jasmine Ford. I'm the program manager of CARES and Prevention in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And like Joanna said, to own your own story. And I just finished writing my own book, and that's more seminal to me because I didn't know that I did not own my own story really until I began to actually write and have myself published. But yes, owning your own story is really key, and people in this community try to actually hijack the whole trans narrative, and we have to struggle to actually own who we are within our own space. So
yes, and I agree with you that a lot of times we do have to it's more important than ever that we create autonomous spaces. And I have this quote that I use, and it's by Zarnell Houston. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she said, if you don't speak about your pain, they'll kill you and say you enjoyed it. So that is one of my favorite quotes. And that's the reason I always, I also like to make sure that I use I and me statements to make sure that it's personalized to my experience, because I don't want to invalidate anyone else's experience while telling my story. And that happens sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like no one can tell your story better than you.
think it's also important when we're telling our stories to try and contextualize it. So one of the things I've always done is when I'm trying to educate someone, especially if I'm trying to educate like a legislator about issues. For example, I was homeless when I was young. So whenever I bring up the fact that I was homeless when I was young, I always try to point to the fact that up to 40% of young LGBTQ people have been homeless at some point in their life. So you try to contextualize it in a greater narrative so that they realize that it's not just this, it's not just about my individual story. My story is reflective of a greater societal ill.
Storytelling is a great social and cultural activity of, of sharing stories with the aim to educate, entertain, and instill moral values, which are mostly used in the cultural oral storytelling event. So we all know that while storytelling, um, it's important to have a beginning, a middle, an end, and a call to action, which I'm sure everyone is familiar with. Advocating on the hill that we normally have the person that introduces the group. We have two people that tell their story, and then we have that person that does the call to action and pass the paperwork, and is very polite in asking for continued support. So,
I'm the one who does the wrap up.
yes. So, examples of storytelling. I thought it was important, since this is AIDSWatch, that we mentioned the Denver principles as one example of storytelling. And it was the first time that people affected with HIV used their voices to demand a stake in policies that would affect them in their lives. And because of them, we do have a way to advocate for ourselves. And I think it kind of produced AIDSWatch and conferences like that. So I thought it was important to start off with the Denver principles as a way of showing activism and also educating people and having a stake. The slide is partially cutting off.
I think it's worth noting too, like telling your story can also be a very healing and therapeutic process. It's and I'll just give an example. I was a sex worker when I was young, and I carried for a long time. I carried a lot of shame because of the decisions I had to make, and it wasn't up until 2015, I think it was, when Janet Mock released her first book, Redefining Realness, where she really went in on her experiences in sex work. And me and her, we share a lot, have a lot of similar experiences when we were young. And in reading her story, it literally freed me from the shame that I carried. And it allowed me to tell my story. So, it's important to note that as you tell your story and as you liberate yourself, you unconsciously liberate the people around you too.
Go back to the other slide so we can finish the examples of storytelling. Wow.
Wait, where am I? There we go.
Okay, so another example of storytelling is Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter started out as a hashtag when Trayvon Martin was murdered, and a queer Black woman decided to use a hashtag to show her anguish toward this like state sanctioned violence toward Black bodies. So it birthed a whole broader movement of people doing Black liberation and creating an equitable society in the USA, which we're continuing to work toward. And I feel like that is another example of storytelling to get people to be better allies, accomplices, and champions for you also. We also mentioned AIDSWatch as being one of the biggest advocate-based conferences in the U.S. where people living with HIV and AIDS share their stories, share information, and meet with their congressmen or congresspeople asking for continued support and also sharing information. I also mentioned TED Talks, which TED is a nonprofit devoted to sharing ideas, usually in the short form of stories, 18 minutes or less. It again is like a technical, entertaining, and design converge, but now it covers a broad range of topics. So I wanted to mention that as another way of storytelling, which is also important. So these are different examples of storytelling and how they affect people. And yeah, so anybody else want to talk about any examples that come to mind while thinking of storytelling?
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mallory Jenner Robinson. I'm here in Los Angeles, California. I'm an Afro-Caribbean Black trans woman living with HIV. So a lot of times when I do panels and speeches here, I do too also personalize my own story and stand in my truth. I also use the mantra of having unity and community. So to see all of us here this morning or this afternoon, it's a really beautiful thing. But storytelling is so key and pivotal, and really having people relate to you as a person, and they really get to see you for who you are and the pains and struggles that you've been through. And that's why I always encourage my clients and any other community members to stand in your truth and share your stories, because you never know who it may impact.
You're right. You're absolutely right. I'm always amazed and shocked at people that are like, I'm doing this because of you, because you never know who you're influencing while you're just being yourself. And I think that's highly important. And also, Ashe, sister. I appreciate you speaking up. And I think it's highly important that we have to craft these stories ourselves and make people understand that we're just individuals also, but we're just affected with a disease that many people have that may not have the same experience. Can y'all think of any other examples of storytelling?
Hi, good morning, family. My name's Saquon, and I'm coming to you from Salt Lake City, Utah. My pronouns are she, her. Some days it's they. Storytelling for me is all about letting people know that they're not alone. You know, I do crisis outreach. I run a nonprofit that does mobile HIV and Hep C testing. We also offer treatment and prevention, but we are focusing on sex workers and active IV injection drug users, because they're forgotten about, especially in this religious town. So it's amazing the look on people's faces that, you know, when they have HIV and they just feel so ashamed, have someone come relate to them, relate to their stories. They don't feel alone anymore. And you can just see the change in their eyes, and it's a beautiful thing. So sharing stories is so important. And plus, you know, one of my favorite quotes is, it's hard to hate up close.
Absolutely.
Joanna, I would come to your party any day, girl.
Huh?
I would come to your party any day.
You're welcome. Come down to Puerto Rico. That goes for all of y'all. Let me know. Let me know if you ever make it down to Puerto Rico.
So can we go to the next slide, please?
Yes.
So it is important while crafting your narrative that there is a beginning. Tell them about you, but also remember to keep it with topic or theme.
On that note, it's also important to be mindful of the things you don't want to discuss. So one of the things that, as you know, as a trans person, when I do like media interviews, and you know, you might want to, like right now in Puerto Rico, we have a conversion therapy ban, and so I will speak about my experiences with the church and with conversion therapy, but that doesn't mean I necessarily want to tell them my whole upbringing. So already knowing what you don't want to discuss and having kind of your go-to answer, like your prepared talking point, so that if at some point they decide to like pivot on something more personal, you already have that go-to answer that can kind of get you out of that out of answering that question.
Yes, and being prepared is also another good thing with crafting your narrative, knowing that those talking points will help you a whole lot, and it'll also keep you from, you know how sometimes you talk and you like and you're kind of like sleepwalking through it because you're not as prepared as you would like to be. So, in the middle, share experiences that shape your experience or your adversity. Anybody else want to talk about like how you share your story, your experience, and your adversity, but also not being tragic while sharing your stories?
Hi, I actually want to share. This is Joelle Bayazuri. I'm with the Normal Anomaly in Houston, Texas. And for me, sharing my narrative is important because growing up, I never saw anyone that I could identify with. I never saw anyone that looked like me. So it was hard to be able to kind of figure out who I was. I feel like because I didn't see myself in anyone and I didn't even see a future in myself, I feel like it made it that much harder to navigate my journey. And I feel like for me as an adult, and as a growing leader in the community, I feel like it's important to tell my story because it increases the representation within the trans community. And for me, it also gives a different type of narrative because I feel like it's very common for people to think that the only narrative of trans people is struggle and death and doom and gloom. Like that's all we have to offer. And so I feel like for me, telling my story is we are just like any other type of women, men, people in the community. We love just like everyone else. We have careers just like everyone else. While yes, the majority of the trans community may make $10,000 or less, we have educated people in our community. We have scholars. We have people that are managers, directors. We have a wide variety within that spectrum. So for me, while I might be the only person that may be telling that type of story, I just like to give a different type of representation because I know that when people within our community only see one or two types, they shrink back. They don't feel like they themselves are seen or heard. And it just creates that much more stigma. And it makes it that much harder for us as a community to move forward.
Ashe. I totally agree with you. And I feel like what you're saying is that being trans is not monolithic, that we all have a broad range of experiences, and we also have to share not just the tragic part, but also the joys and the pleasures that we have in life, being able to share that with people and showing that we're not all just, you know, sometimes I had this thing I used to do, which was things that cis people want from trans people. I don't know if y'all ever heard that before. And one of the things was a lot of cis people want you to be tragic, but they want you to be tragic without a coin, right? And it's just like the things that cis people want from trans people. And I'm not saying all cis people want that, but that's the only narrative they hear a lot of times. So we have to kind of push back against that tragic narrative. Do y'all agree with that?
I agree completely. Let's be real. Some of these organizations that are run by cis people, they want the trans people to tell their trauma stories because it brings in money. They fundraise. They fundraise using statistics that, you know, that are exacerbated by the plight of queer and queer youth of color. Let's be real, and specifically Black. Like they say, oh, so many, you know, people in the LGBTQ community are denied housing or discriminated against. But look at the crosstabs. Look at the people who we're actually talking about. And they want, you know, we get hired, you know, trans people of color, we got hired at organizations so that we could tell our stories because we give these organizations street cred. Let's be real. And so that's why I think owning your own narrative, telling your story is immensely empowering because you're saying, you know, no, I'm not a victim. Yes, these are the experiences I have had to live, you know, and because of these systems in which we operate in, you know, then, and that's why we do the work we do to dismantle these systems. But no, I'm not a victim. And so for me, it's been owning my story because it's a continuous process, especially when we are people who have experienced significant amounts of trauma. It's not always easy to own your story because it comes with so much shame. You know, with being, I'm also a HIV positive woman. There's so much shame and stigma that is internalized. And so owning your own story and shedding those layers of yourself and claiming your narrative, for me, I find it immensely healing. And it's a continuous process because, you know, there's the trauma that we experience as HIV positive people, as queer people, as people of color, as trans people. We experience trauma on a continuous basis. So the process of healing also needs to be continuous.
Yes. That's just like that healing process also is it's when you speak and you have a catharsis, which is like the catharsis is a release of that tension, but also finding a healing process within that trauma. So the ending, bring it back to the reason that you are there and the goal that is related to your topic. It's important that we stay on topic and that we stay on topic and we make sure that we stick to the theme that we have spoke about in the beginning. And also your demand or your request to make sure to be polite in your acts and thank them for listening to your story. Your goal is to draw them into being a champion or ally for your cause by being relatable with your story. Does anybody want to talk about where you think you may have or did change a person's opinion of how trans people operate or exist?
Hi, everyone. It's Mallory Jenna Robinson again here, Trans Connections in Los Angeles. Yeah, you know, hearing what you just asked, I really do feel like that with the stories that we share, that they do change people's lives, and oftentimes for the better. I think so many times that we do get in our own heads and think that our stories are going to scare people, frighten people, freak them out. But a lot of times it end up inspiring others, especially our youth. you know, that are just newly transitioning. So when you share your story and it impacts one person, when you have people come up to you and say, I am proud to be HIV too, because of the story that you have shared. I'm no longer ashamed and worried of how people are going to treat me. And even being Black and trans, but then like Joelle said earlier, so many times they don't see us as people that are capable of having careers. You know, I have a double bachelor's working on my master's in social work. You know, I've been married to a cis man. I've had the love story and a divorce too. So I've had that whole thing. And that's the thing, is so many times that they feel like that we're just sex workers, people that are, you know, trying to get whatever in prisons, IV users, whatever they want to label us as. But we are more than that. And I started my transition when I was 16 and I'm 31 now. So I've even defied the odds for the same ones who said, oh, you wouldn't make it past 20, you wouldn't make it past 25, and to still be here. And so that's why these stories, every little inch of our story touches someone in a level, whether it's because I'm Black in HIV, whether it's because I'm trans Black in HIV, whether it's because I'm just trans and you may not be HIV positive or Black. Somewhere along the way, my story is going to impact you. And if it just touches one person, then we've done our job.
Absolutely. Mallory, you are a intersectional being. You have issues that intersect with your Blackness, and I appreciate you sharing your topic with us, because it's very important, because sometimes we go into spaces and people don't want us to be whole. They don't want us to be whole. They just want us to be Black. We don't want to talk about gender and sexual identity right now. Can you just be Black? But you a whole ass person.
Yes.
Right? And I want people to know that when we share our stories, we let them know that we can be Black and disabled, Black and HIV positive.
Yes.
Black and, because we don't need to compartmentalize our identities.
Yes.
To be in spaces with people that look just like us. It happens to me every day. But I keep on pushing because I know that it's somebody coming behind me.
Yes.
That I want to be able to say, oh, Renee did it, I can do it.
Yes.
So I appreciate you sharing your story, and your intersectional being and your Blackness intersects with different issues, but that makes you a whole person, and that's your experience.
Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you, babies.
Next slide, please.
Wait, hold on. I want to add something, because I think you made a really good point here where it says stay on topic. No, I've been at meetings. I've organized meetings with legislators, with heads of agencies, where we brought together trans leaders from across the country to speak about their issues, to tell their stories. And it becomes a complaining fest. It becomes just complaining about everything wrong with society, everything the agency does wrong, everything the government does wrong. And then there's never the problem solving. There's never like the proposal, the piece of legislation. And I have walked away from those experiences sometimes thinking, what of a waste of a really good opportunity that we have to sit across from very important people who have an impact, who can make changes, who could implement our ideas. And you know, and the opportunity is being used for catharsis, which is good. It's healing. It's great. But in that, we forget that we are there as advocates to advocate for more than just our own needs. We're there to advocate for the people who don't have access to that room. So I thought it was really important just to stress that whole staying on topic, because also when you do share your story, sometimes, especially if you haven't healed certain parts of yourself, it can, you could get a little frazzled. You could get a little derailed of what your objective is there. So always having that in your back of in your mind of what you're there for. Are you there to pass a piece of legislation, gain support, get someone to sign on a sign-on letter? If you want them to, to release a statement, whatever it is, remember that ask afterwards, because that's what you're giving them. That's what you get in return. You're sharing a piece of yourself. It's like, okay, but if you're not going to pay me, at least give me something, at least support me, and at least support my goals in some way, my objectives in some way. So I just wanted to stress that a little.
Russell, would you like to elaborate on your question that you posted in the chat?
Hi, my name is Russell, Kansas City. And everybody hear me, I suppose. It wasn't really a question, it was more of a statement, because this is something that we deal with locally. Everybody wants to bitch and complain because this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. So for people like me, I show up to help facilitate or ask what can I do differently, because I feel like what I'm doing is not enough. And what I continue to hear is the same complaints. Okay, so I can come up with solutions all day long, but it's not coming from the people that need the change. So for me, I've learned that if I have a complaint in general, that I need to also come with a potential solution. I need to stop bitching and put some action to that. Does that make sense?
Comments, questions, anyone?
Hi, yes, this is Jen Laws. I'm just outside of New Orleans, a trans guy. And I gotta say that I think a lot of the complaints also have solutions in them. And when we hear from especially entities, not just legislators, but like outside, but when we hear from entities that are soaking up funds aimed for trans community going, well, we can't make that big of a change. We got to push back against that too. This complaint that people just kind of complain. I don't think it's necessarily grounded in truth. I think that the solutions are in those complaints as well, and we need buy-in from these entities that are taking up dollars in our name to make those changes.
Thank you, Jen. I think I really feel like to be human is to have these issues, and it's nothing wrong with complaining about your problems, because it's your problems, but always having a possible solution in mind when you are complaining. When your needs are not met, your focus is on that need that is not being met. I've been in many meetings where people were wanting more out of HOPWA and being homeless, and wanting more than the programming that we do have to help them not be homeless, because we know if they're being homeless, they ain't worried about taking their HIV medicine. They're more worried about where they're going to be able to lay down. And if they can't take their medicine, they're not going to be a healthy individual, and they're going to have other problems. So I feel like even with you complaining, that's to show that that's the issue that you have, and it's important that you state that issue. And you don't necessarily have to have a way to fix it, but you do need to let people know that that's the issue you are having.
Important to know who you're talking to, because you could be complaining or voicing concerns or complaints about something, and the person who you're speaking to, it could be completely unrelated to what they do, their jurisdiction, their purview. So they you know, they'll be courteous and they'll listen to you and empathize, but there's not a whole lot they can do. So also being mindful, you know, who you're speaking with,
Who your audience is.
yeah, who your audience is.
Who your audience is. Always make sure you recognize who the audience is, so you can have that that just yes gen. So know your audience and know their power that can to affect changes. So I know quite a few of us. We didn't make it to the White House when Obama was in office, but I am damn sure hoping that I get to go and meet Mr. Biden at some point and talk about the trans issues. I've been heavily watching the Equality Act to see if it's going to make it, because I believe like we need these policy changes, and everyone needs to call their senators, congressperson, and let them know that you're watching the Equality Act and that we need this.
Also, the Equality Act protects more than just LGBTQ people. It also protects religious minorities.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, people focus on the LGBTQ part because it's the most controversial part, but it actually protects Muslims. It protects all of these religious minorities and you know, from being discriminated against. By the way, it's 12:40 here, and I've been in class all day, and my husband just brought me Popeyes. So if you see me moving off screen to get a bite, just, you know, a little bit of grace.
So
this is Russell again. If I may respond just a little bit further. Sure. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm here to learn. I'm not here to say really that this is what we struggle with. I think some of us as allies, because we aren't trans people and we don't have trans experience, we only have friends or loved ones that do have that trans experience. So for me, when I use that statement of, do you want support or do you want solutions? I think is one of the other things that, and I've had to work through my own personal therapy to start using that statement. Do you want me to support you, or do you want me to just listen and be here, or do you want me to take action with you?
Absolutely. So I'm gonna give you a little bit of how I see ally. I see, and I'm sorry if anybody gets offended by this. This is me personally. I see allies as someone who may not have been vetted, that says like, I support trans people, but they're safely at home when you're protesting, talking about what they would have done if they had been there. I don't prefer allies. That's like that whole safety pin thing where people were saying, I'm a safe white person because I'm wearing a safety pin. That was being an ally and being passive aggressive. So I think of accomplices and co-conspirators. I need you to put your body where my body is, and also shield me while I'm out here doing whatever I'm doing. And maybe you can have some bail money too, because that's the experience. We need more people that will put their body in harm's way and be like, that's not right. It's just like a while back, there was this video of trans women trying to catch an Uber in Los Angeles, and they was targeted by these people, and people were like walking by with their cameras instead of saying, this isn't right, and stepping in and helping those people, but they could take their camera out and record. And I feel like that's the type of stuff that an ally would do, but an accomplice would have stepped in there and been like, this ain't right, y'all not gonna do this. And we're all people too. So that's what I think about ally, accomplice, and co-conspirators. Because I'm a movement person. So I feel like talk is cheap. Anyone else?
I agree with that. I had a supervisor one time who she said, Joanna, because I referred to her as an ally. She said, Joanna, I'm not your ally. She goes, we are community. She goes, what impacts you impacts me. And to me that's a distinction. Like ally to me feels a little bit removed, like, oh, it gives you that option of opting out. But when you're community with someone, no, if someone messes with you, they're messing with me, because now we're family, we're community. So I also like the language that Renee used about the accomplice.
Oh, I'm all about the accomplice and the co-conspirator. But that also goes back to storytelling. Getting people to relate to you, understand your story, and also buy in, not just as an ally, but an accomplice to affect change and help you make changes. Not just being someone that's standing to the side, because those stories resonate. And when you resonate with people, they can say, oh, Mallory, she wants what I want. She's professional. She has 2 degrees. I can see Mallory as my neighbor. And that's a buy-in. And that resonated, her story resonated with a person. And they be like, also, she's Black and she's trans. And I can see her because she's doing the same thing that I'm doing. I'm going to school. She's my neighbor. I would be concerned if I saw something happening to Mallory. And that's the importance of storytelling, is being relatable and getting people to really resonate and feel your story and become your champion.
Thank you, Renee. I totally agree with that. Absolutely. It is a big difference. You and Joanna both. I think it's so important to be able to differentiate. And Russell, you asked a really good question about solutions and support. And I think that is something that a lot of people who say they are allies should preface with. Because I feel like if you're going to be providing some solutions, then you're definitely an accomplice. You're definitely wanting to get in there and figure out how we, as a community, like Jonah said, can put this together. But when you start asking for more support, which is nice, I don't mind a shoulder to lean on. But like I said, like Renee said, I also need someone who's gonna have that bail money just in case if we need to be out there. It's good importance to really start off with that. Are you gonna be someone who's gonna be about the solutions, or are you just gonna be someone that's gonna just be a moral support? And I need to be able to differentiate between that right now, because people say they're your friends and they got your back. And then when it's all, time for things to really hit the fan, that's when we know if they're an accomplice or an ally.
Yeah. Because, strong people need people to lean on too. I have a friend, he's a trans guy from New York. We check in on each other. We check in on each other every week to make sure that we're okay, because people lean on him and people lean on me. And sometimes I don't have anybody to lean on.
I think that happens to us as trans people a lot. Oftentimes we're looked at as the poster child for inspiration. And we're a source of light and inspiration to all the people around us. And sometimes it feels as though it's like, well, I'm not a superhero. I'm still a human being. Like, I also need support. Just because I can put on a good front that, like, oh, I'm good, I'm strong and everything like that, doesn't mean that I'm okay. And I think remembering that trans people, we're not just this source of light and inspiration to the cis world, that we also need support. So Russell, I appreciate your framing about asking that question, because it has been helpful for me, for my friends to, one, to check in, and also to ask, like, what does support look like for you? What do you need? Because like, whatever you need, I'm happy to give it to you. I just need you to let me know how you want me to show up.
Well, and I'd like to add, if y'all will let me, that those who would move from being an ally to community or an accomplice should not ask the question, how can I support you, or find solutions, if you're not willing to actually do what's asked of you. I've seen it often. Well, we'll do this half measure, or we'll hold your hand. And that's great. But if I'm asking you to help me put food on the table, or to create jobs for a sister in need, then that's what you need to do.
Yes, I feel like
That's it. That's a pile of resources right here that I have
Yeah.
that has nothing to do with me.
Yeah. So, hey, Jay Lenore. So I feel like it's highly important to get people to really understand that we do have to be the change that we speak. And we also have to have follow up when someone may present you with a solution, but there may not be any follow up to that solution that's been voiced. People will let you down and say that this is what a visible next step looks like, and then the ball is dropped. But we're here to talk about um, conveying trans stories to people who are cisgender, and also getting them to buy in and be a champion for us so we can have our measure of what a good life, equitable life in the United States look like. So questions, comments is open.
I'm always going to have questions in a room
Sure.
full of people that may.
This is Olga. I am so glad you said that about, what the difference between ally and I can't say the other word right now.
Accomplice and co-conspirator.
I'm always questioning myself, am I really an ally? What, and stuff like that. What can I do to be a better ally? But now that you said there's a difference between, I'm going to try to learn to be more, step up more in the front. I'm already in the front. I've been arrested 9 times, and one of them was for the LGBT protest in DC. So, but I'm going to learn to put myself more online, my body more online. My financial situations, I know I could never help with bail money or nothing like that. But now I know that will make me better as a helper for your cause. I will put my body more on the line.
Elga, I really appreciate that. And it's not always about money. It's just that sometimes cis people are not treated the same way that trans people are. They're just like, we all know that Black people aren't treated the same way that white people. So like when I go to protests, I'll be like, white people in the front, because they're not going to beat them up as bad as they may beat me up. So that's
that's what keeps me going.
Yeah,
that's what when I first seen that kept me going. I was treated like almost like a queen.
Yeah,
and
so
I'm going to be blunt. The more darker color or the more you look different from what society thinks you're supposed to be, the harder they were treating them.
Yeah, that's the only thing I'm saying about accomplices. I don't. It's not always about money. It's just that I know that when I'm protesting, if I have an accomplice that's right there that's willing to put their body on the line, they may not get treated the way I get treated because they may have the right complexion. And I appreciate you saying that you would do that, but do it also in a safe means. You may not have to put your body online. Maybe you can fundraise, and that's another way to be an accomplice without just putting your body on the line, but also speaking up, because you could be a fundraiser. You could be like, I'm gonna help get some bail money, and you can go to people and do stuff like that. It's many. You're right, Russell. It's many ways to get involved, and putting your body online is just an example of being a good accomplice instead of being an ally. A lot of allies are not vetted. They were like, I support you, but when it's needed, they're not there. But accomplices, they're there. They're like, do you need a ride? Do you need some milk? Do you need things? That's accomplice.
Yeah, what I do here for a couple of our trans in Ohio that I know, I make sure I escort them to the bathrooms if it's an iffy place and all that, I've escorted them through airports. So, yeah, because I know I get treated different than them.
Yeah. You know that you have that privilege and you know how to use your privilege to leverage for someone else, and I appreciate that. Any other questions or statements or comments?
one of the things that, because you said something that is very important, there's a lot of self-appointed allies. And one of the things that has happened to me in the past, and it's happened mostly with family members who consider themselves allies, is that someone in their timeline or in their world will say or post something that's transphobic. And then they will want you to educate that person on why it's transphobic. And I've literally had to tell family members, like, well, then what the hell do I have you for? Like, that's literally the role of an ally, is so I don't have to fight that fight. You know?
Absolutely.
And what I do a lot of media interviews, and on occasion, even though I'm not supposed to, I'll look at the comments just to see like what people say. And there are, you know, the comment section for most part, to me, is confirmation that there are more lovers than there are haters, because you'll always get, you know, like nasty transphobic comments, but there's overwhelmingly more people who are supportive. And I find it almost amusing, because some people they are, you know, such allies that they will write whole dissertations about gender and sexuality in defense of me, a total stranger, in some comment section in an article. And I like, for me, I find it hard to wrap my mind around, like, damn, someone would take this much time out of their day to like write a whole post, you know, in some comment section of an article in defense of someone else. But that's the role of allies. That's the role of allies, so that we as trans people, as marginalized and as oppressed people, we're not consistently having to, you know, fight those battles, because we have to fight plenty of them on a day-to-day basis.
I really appreciate that story, because another way of having a good accomplice is they will take up your mantle for you. It's just like, because I'm non-binary and people choose to judge me on my vessel. So a lot of time my pronouns are not respected. And even sometimes when people try to step in and be a good accomplice, even they get it wrong. So they're like, he uses they, them, and their pronouns. And I'm like, really? But it happens. And they're like they're being good, but they're not. But there's a better way of having an accomplice that knows how to actually advocate for you and get everything correct in that moment, so you don't always have to hold that that traumatic piece. That's what I always say. A good accomplice can hold that traumatic piece that you don't have to hold it, so you don't have to have that trauma come upon you. So that's what another step for a good accomplice is someone that can handle it, so you don't have to be traumatized all the time. So, is there any other questions, comment about storytelling and making sure that we stay on topic, stay on topic, and be relatable, and have that call for action at the end when you close, and be polite. So, are there any questions, comments, anything else?
If whoever feels like sharing, if someone could share a time when they were impacted by someone else's story.
Well, I was given a keynote speech about 2 years ago, and it was a community keynote speech, and I talked about Shadi Pataski's story of getting stopped at the Orlando airport and not being able to get through. She missed her flight. Huge level of issues because she got flagged during screening. Turned around and said to the audience, I'm like, listen, you've got a bunch of non-binary and trans folks here among those who would be allies. How many of y'all are going to turn around and pay the $45 to make sure somebody has less of a hard time getting home? And we raised something like $600 right then and there, redistributed it, and everything else. And it's big and small things, right? Like whether we're trying to put somebody in a home for that month, or we're trying to get people home from a conference, we got to take care of folks. And it's not my story. I despite everything, like being non-surgical, I pass. I have no problem, and I upgraded my privilege. I'm a white guy. But turning that around and telling somebody else's story about being harassed by cops in an airport, trying to get home, as folks are getting ready to get home, was really, really meaningful in terms of connecting it to the experience people were having right then and there. And I think that is a key in telling someone else's story, is that it connects to what's happening for people in that moment.
Thank you for sharing.
Jen, I saw your comment in the box, and you're absolutely right that a fast pass or clear, somebody buying a clear for someone going through the airport is another step of being a good accomplice. And we need more of that when we know that we may live in places where we can't get an X or we can't get our gender markers changed. It helps a whole lot because normally when I fly, I've had those. I've been squeezed when I went through the scanner. They were like, "We have anomalies," and I've been squeezed on my chest, and I've been patted in my nether regions, and it had messed me up so bad that I went to the wrong gate and likely got on the wrong plane and missed my plane altogether because my mind was messed up. So that is another step that people can help people. And I want to thank you all for attending our session and being so opening and willing and listening and sharing. So I want to thank y'all.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. If anyone wants to reach out to me, my email is just my name. It's joanna.cifredo@gmail. And I'm available for any questions. And definitely, if y'all come down to Puerto Rico, let me know.
Yes. Yes, we can share emails and contacts in the chat. I'm going to put my personal email in the chat. And also, I can be added on Facebook. That's my other home. I will put my I want to put my business email on there also. And you don't have to be a stranger. You can add me on Facebook or Linked or any of those. I sleep with my computer and stuff in the bed, so I'm always available. My girlfriend, her name is Insomnia, and I'm always I'm always up all times of day and night. So yeah.
Well,
so y'all want to share any emails, anything? Let's do that in the chat.
know. Renee, do you know if the transcript of this session will be available?
Chris?
It is being recorded and saved. It is at the discretion of AIDS United whether they will share it, but I believe that they are.
I can look into that. This is Victoria.
Thank you, Victoria. Victoria,
yeah,
is the session over?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It's 1 p.m. I think.
I'm in a different time zone, so I am so confused.
It's 1 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, I'm in Central, so I'm thrown off.
Same. That's why I was late this morning and yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay. See you, everyone, unless you have questions or... Oh, hour and a half. My calendar says hour and a half. So.
Yeah, it's still 1:30.
Yes, it's 1:30. So if anybody wants to chat and continue, we can.
So Renee, I have a question. The very last thing that you asked was, I think maybe Joanna may have asked it, one of the two of you, about like sharing experience related to other people.
Mm-hmm.
Can you repeat that question?
Oh, I said if anyone wants to share a story about a time when someone else's story made an impact on them. So, for example, I shared when I read Janet Mock's book, Redefining Realness, how liberating that was for me.
Okay. I mean, so my partner is non-binary, and I met my partner as a cis male, and their story, like, that's the first thing right there. Me saying there is a huge deal. So I'm also part of the leather community, and am, like somebody said yesterday, how did you get the reputation that you have? Why does everybody treat you and respect you the way that they do? I said, I don't have that answer. And I was like, I have to ask somebody else because I don't know how to respond to that. And one of the things that was told to me is because you just keep showing up and you're just who you are. You know, if you screw up, if you misgender, you misname, or you use wrong terms or anything like that, you immediately just, oops, I'm sorry, and move on. Like, that's what they told me. And so the thing that affects me the most is like some of my, it makes me emotional because it pisses me off. Some of my, who I would call my mentors, I have had to leave because their events or their group wants to ask for your ID. And they want it to show a male gender marker to match what your appearance is. And because in the state of Missouri, they know that that's really hard to get, you know, they stick with it. So I have literally cussed them out in front of people. I've been like, look, if you're going to be this way, that's fine. Don't come. Don't show up. People don't need you to be here. And when my partner feels uncomfortable coming from a cis male perspective, going to those events as a cis man, and I guess maybe skipping over their own gender because they wanted to be present in that with me as my boy with a Y. And so when they finally came out to me, I was like, yep, Jen, that's me.
We came from similar places, that's all.
Yeah. I think we may have met. I knew it. I was like, I know who that person is, I think. But it's so stressful because I want to be, I am a dom person. I am also in the kink and BDSM, and I also don't put up with shit from anybody. I don't care who you are. If you want to cause trouble, that's fine. But it better be for a good reason. And so my thing is my partner's story is what affects me the most. Because my partner struggled, first of all, to come out to me. After we've already been dating, my partner struggles to be part of that community because they don't feel safe enough as a non-binary trans person to be there. So it is my job to continue to do what I do and put my effort in, and that's how that affects me really. That's what I was really getting at is, you know, there's so many different details to that story, but it's all a learning process, and I think some of our community just doesn't want to learn. Thank you for letting me share that.
Thanks for sharing, Russell. We have a question. We'd love any feedback, direction on improving mobile outreach efforts for the trans community. Do you have a gatekeeper?
Silent, babe.
Okay,
Huh?
no, I don't right now.
You don't have a gatekeeper?
No.
Okay, you need a gatekeeper.
Explain that.
A gatekeeper is a person that has an in-way into community, that is visible and seen within the community that people trust.
Okay.
Normally with that gatekeeper, that's your inroad into the community, and they'll be like, this is a ally that has this service or that service. They're doing prevention. That person will normally lead people to you.
Okay.
Mobile outreach now has gone from mobile to mobile. You know,
Oh.
so like,
were you talking about like cellular?
Yeah, because people still think like when they think mobile outreach, they think like the girls are still on the street. It's like the girls ain't on the street anymore. Like
No.
we were on the street when I was young 15 years ago, but now we have social media. So there's no point in standing on the street in the midst of a pandemic risking getting arrested when you could find your clients online.
Yeah, so that was the mobile. I'm sorry. I thought they were talking about like.
Oh, no, I was talking about like coming to you type mobile.
Oh, okay. So yeah, that the gatekeeper, that'll drive people to you. Yeah, you need a gatekeeper. You need someone that's visible in the community. You're in Jackson, Mississippi?
No, I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. But yeah, you need a gatekeeper, someone that's well known, that will drive people to you. And like Jen said, if they're trans, hire them, create a position. And normally when they know it's incentivized, it feels good to know you can be able to pay someone and they can pay their bills without doing anything extraneous.
Excellent. Thank you, guys.
Would also say tapping into like if there's any GSAs in your area or if the universities have like like a queer student group, that's a good place to start. And then because the thing is just there's no stroll. Whenever you hear like mobile outreach, people think like, oh, I'm just gonna drive up to the stroll and give the girls condoms. It's like, it's not 2005, you know? So like the way to do it is like, there's a lot organizing on Instagram. So like you can follow local activists, organizers, reach out to them directly via Instagram. And that way you do start developing that relationship with a gatekeeper, someone who does have access to much more trans people.
Yes, Jen, when engaging with the trans community, get active with those incentives and engagements. Yes. That's a motivation.
Yep, that's the one thing that I've learned up here, because I literally live off of 2 blocks away from our general stroll, and if they're stopping to talk to you, they're not working. They're taking a break for you, and if you can incentivize them by saying, "Here, spend some time with me. Let's work through something," that's the biggest feedback I think that we've gotten from people that are no longer in that business, and they're on a different side of that business, and that's what they're telling us to continue to do.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know about that one, because like if I'm there, I'm working. Like I don't have time to, like, it's like my time is money. What is it that you need? Like, because it's like Renee says, if you're not gonna pay me, like I'm on the clock right now. And so
that's what I meant to say. That's how I meant to say that, was that pay them because they're actually taking time out of their day and their job to get paid to talk to you.
I think the most important thing
I also think
hold on. That your primary objective should be to establish a relationship, to build a relationship with these persons. I think oftentimes when we're in the nonprofit industrial complex, we get so caught up on deliverables. How many tests can we deliver? How many condoms? How many this? How many that? And we dehumanize people in that process. We treat people as though they're numbers, because I have a grant that I need to deliver for. And so I think the primary objective should be building a relationship with this person, building a relationship with the community. Because if this is the community that you seek to serve, you're there to serve. They're not there to serve you and your needs.
Right. I mean, I'm gonna tell you, I was at Joanna. You were so right, because I used to work for an organization as an outreach specialist, and we used to go to the stroll. And I had stopped this girl one night, and she was like, "Y'all got some money? Y'all wasting my time. Y'all scaring off the dates." And she was like, but when we learned that if we showed up with like gift cards and other incentives, she was like, and then when she found out that we had condoms and we had FCs and we had lube, and we also have like this walking wild trans thing here. So we found out that you could have only so many condoms. We were throwing condoms and lubes in the bushes. And be like, "Girl, some condoms up there in the bush, if you need them, And the girls were more receptive, and they would start coming in. I'm like, "What y'all doing tonight?" And they were like, "We're trying to test," and they will come in, and they just got where and also we were going back as part of prevention. It's going back and being repetitive and being seen and building that relationship that made people want to start talking to us, and with the gift cards, and even maybe just having coffee or bringing sandwiches, and because sometimes you find out that people haven't eaten and different things, and that's an incentive too for them to talk to you, and it's just building those type of relationships. It's just putting the work in.
So Renee, can I add something to that? And this is probably more for the institutional individuals that do referrals. I think oftentimes we can also be additionally creative with sustainable incentives. I don't know how many agencies actually make partnerships with the housing authority to guarantee that there are spots for trans identified individuals who are in need of housing, as well as workplace with the local workforce centers to guarantee that they are receiving diverse candidates that we can refer to them for guaranteed employment. Those are additional sustainable incentives that we can do the work in partnership to ensure that some of the social determinants of the reality that we live certainly can be introduced, because I believe with gift cards, sometimes, the dollar amount can go so fast because there's such an immediate need, but the long term of the incentives is also just as critical. And so I just want to offer that to those who are in position to make those relationships, and call them whatever you can, but there'll be sustainable incentives for our community because that's longevity, because we can't walk in there at times and advocate because of the hate and discrimination, but an institution can on our behalf to make that relationship and guaranteed for us.
Thank you, Kamarian. That was a great with building that relationship with the housing authority to have diverse candidates, and sometimes trans people don't even know that that's an option as far as affordable housing. So thanks for that. So any other questions, comments, conversations we have for the last 10 minutes?
Anyone who hasn't spoken yet?
Huh?
Anyone who hasn't spoken yet? There's way too many people on this Zoom for this to be this quiet.
I was typing in my statement or what have you. Hi, Joanna.
Hey,
I believe I met you at an event that we had in DC, and hope to. I think so. I want to say I did, but I can't remember. I'm horrible with remembering things. But I did want to say that it's really important to get open and honest feedback from or to your funders because essentially we advocate on community's behalf, and it's important to have like the voice of community present whenever we are navigating spaces, to kind of break down some of the barriers that exist when it comes to funding. So I can only speak from Age United vantage point, but open and honest feedback around, challenges or opportunities, things that you feel are most, critical for the type of work that you're engaging in community. I think that really helps us to navigate or to support from this vantage point.
Which leads into the topic of the whole workshop, was storytelling and building a buy-in for people to resonate with your experience and what your goal is while presenting your story and crafting your narrative. It's important for people to hear those stories and also resonate with your story to become a champion for you. So
one thing, thank you, Jade, for sharing that, because I think that's such a good point, especially for people. Most of us work in nonprofits and most of us are grant funded, and we have deliverables. And opening up that line of communication with a funder helps them adjust their expectations. So if you are having difficulty establishing a rapport within the community, delivering on, 200 HIV tests, a month or something like that, having that communication, sharing those stories of how challenging it is, the things that you have done, what you've been up to, helps them adjust their expectations. Because then they say, okay, well, if 200 is too much, let's bring that down to 100, or 50, and we'll scale up, and that feedback is essential. So thank you, Jade, for adding that. I think it's really important.
By all means, I wanted to say too, please, if you know for a fact that the funder is not a funder that is going to receive feedback in a positive way, use your better judgment. I can, like I said, I can only speak from an AU standpoint, and I know that myself, I really want to know. I want to know exactly what it is. I want to know the details of how we may not have got it right, and that's the only way that we can try to make it right. So I just wanted to say that because I wouldn't want someone to have that conversation with the funder and then the funder just completely flip. And it's unfortunate, I think. But I want to say that we're getting to a place where accountability is less of an idea and more of a consistency across the board. So, they should probably think twice about flipping out. But definitely, I think I wanted to say that as well. And then that's all I have to say.
I just wanted to piggyback off that. This is Kiva Kadina from Hilo, Hawaii. Thank you for pointing that out. And one thing that I've realized, especially here in Hawaii, where our numbers are fairly low, but our trans population is very high. When we meet challenges with deliverables and we find those roadblocks, I think it's really important to also consider, what did we do to overcome them? How did we modify our approach? How do we modify the project? What kind of shifts did we make? I think that when we do have those challenges and we report back to our funders, when we're bringing those solution-based type of scenarios that have let them see that we're making our best effort in meeting what is expected of the grant, however, modifying ourselves to be respectful of the community, I think that goes a long way for future funding. So thank you for pointing that out.
Anybody else who hasn't spoken or would like to be heard, please step right up.
Hello? Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hear you.
Okay. Yeah. Good morning. I just wanted to say that I'm learning about how to stand up because I have some trans sisters that I've known for a long time, and I just don't like how they're being treated because it's not a lot of services for them. And I just want to know what more I can do to take a stand in my state because I'm in Arizona. And they're just terrible with the trans community out here. So I'm just wondering, what can I do?
Joanna?
I was just reading some other questions in the chat.
They said Arizona, Renee.
Yeah, I saw. What part of Arizona?
Well, I'm in Phoenix, but I mean, I'm just speaking for the state as a whole. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What are the LGBTQ organizations in your area? Do you know?
Well, they have 1 in 10, but that's for the youth. I was just talking like for the adults, because they I don't believe they touch on the adults, but I can ask because they do stop at age 24.
Carmen, if I could answer that, if I could attempt to answer your question, thank you, by the way, for asking. And you pointed out that you already had some trans friends that you've known for a long time. So my suggestion to you is really go to your people. Those are your gatekeepers into the community, and find out what it is that they're looking for. Because I think oftentimes we think that we have to do something huge to make a difference, and it really is sometimes just asking, "Are you okay? What is it that you need that I can do?" And it's important that we check where our privileges are and understand where our community's privileges aren't, so that when we do have the ability to sit at a table that maybe trans people cannot sit at or have not been invited to, we can be that voice piece, that mouthpiece for people that haven't gotten to that space yet. Find out what type of, or look into your own experiences and what type of services did you gain access to. What type of services may not have been modified or may not have been catered to trans people, and you help them understand what they need to do to tap into trans people more often. I think that we forget that our similarities are what can bring us all together, and there's more similarities than there are differences. And so any type of services, any type of social support that you have received, how is it not being catered to trans people, especially in Arizona? If there's not enough services out there, what are the services that I used? And how can it be modified to be more accepting and more welcoming to trans folks? And then ask your community, ask those people that you're close to, and be consistent. And when you ask, make sure that you're available to meet what that ask is. That's my suggestion to you. Thank you for asking.
Thank you, Kiva.
Well, thank you. Huh? I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I think that was really great.
I was just going to suggest reaching out to some of the local queer organizations and just telling them you want to help.
Yeah,
Russell,
I mean, huh?
Russell just posted a phone number and org in the chat.
Oh, Okay.
Can you see it, Carmen?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see it. It's tsac.org. Okay.
And then that's the phone number for
Okay.
them. It's called Trans Spectrum of Arizona. It has very limited hours. Like they don't open until 6:30 to 8:30. So they're only, it sounds like it might be like a community center for trans folks. But they even have other pages linked. If you type in Trans Spectrum of Arizona into GPS, it will give you all of the hours that are related. It has a different portion of the website for transmasc, transfem, SOFFAs, which I'm not sure what that means. And then like third space page, and then transparent page also. Lots of stuff on the GPS that you can find.
Thanks, Russell. It is 12:30. I really appreciate everyone who attended the workshop and that participated, and I hope that storytelling. Russell, we got on the same shirt.
I know. Look,
I'm very intentional. So I'm really hoping that the storytelling resonated with you, and that you got something that you needed from it. And Joanna, you got anything?
Yeah. I hope that you walk out of this knowing that your stories are powerful. You know, our stories are powerful. Our stories have the potential to heal. They have the ability to inspire, to motivate, to you know. So I want you to don't underestimate the power of your story, of sharing your story. So I hope you walk away with that, and know that it's not an easy process. That being, honest with the things that we've gone through, sometimes it's not easy. It can bring up a lot of things, but it can be a very healing process if we're brave enough to actually be honest with ourselves and then to the world. So I will be available if anyone has any questions or wants to talk afterwards. But other than that, have a wonderful day.
Thanks, y'all.